In this video, I want to showcase 27 free tabletop role-playing games you can legally download and play right now. I know that there are quick starters for a lot of games, which give you the bare minimum on the rules so that you can get your feet wet and maybe consider buying the game. But what we want to look at today are a sample of the wide variety of unique indie and third-party RPGs, which you can explore the full rules of without spending a dime. I'll be providing a quick overview of each game and what makes them stand out. And of course, I'll leave links down in the video description where you can grab them. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. If I've left a game out that you think should be included, please make a note of it in the comments, and bonus points if you describe the game a little and leave a link to where you can legally download it. Also, this is not a ranked list. The order is really pretty random, except that I'm dividing the games into ones I've reviewed on this channel and ones I haven't yet. So alright, let's get started. Here are the games that I've actually reviewed on this channel, which you could get for free in one form or another. This video is sponsored by Chepeku, creators of battle maps for role-playing games. They are now on a dedicated new Patreon, making maps of all shapes and sizes for sci-fi and cyberpunk games that include spaceships, space stations, cities, alien worlds, vehicles, mechs, and more. Their maps work in every virtual tabletop, including Roll20, Foundry, Alchemy, you name it. For their mechs and spaceships, they make both the interiors and exteriors to maximize play options, either for onboard action or full-on mech and space battles. Their Patreon is producing 3 or 4 sci-fi battle maps a month right now, and as a patron, you get to vote on what you'd like them to create. Each map that they make comes with a ton of variations, usually about 10 variants per map, so you can get an exact fit for any given scene that you're trying to run. They recommend the $5 tier on their Patreon, which gives you access to all previously released maps and all variations. At the $10 level, you also get animated maps and Foundry VTT modules. They've been making battle maps for 4 years running now, and their Fantasy Battle Maps Patreon has over 18,000 patrons at this point. The requests for them to make sci-fi and cyberpunk maps was so overwhelming that they've launched a whole new Patreon account that caters exclusively to those genres. I can personally attest to their quality of fantasy maps since I've been using them for years. I can't wait to use some of their sci-fi maps in my upcoming games. I've left a link to where you can find their new sci-fi battle maps Patreon down below. Alright, back to the video. Ironsworn by Sean Tompkin was initially released as a free game in 2018. The default setting is sort of fantasy Viking-esque, and your character is bound by oaths large and small made on sacred iron, hence the title of the game. It made a big splash because it was a very highly polished, powered by the apocalypse-based RPG that could be played solo as well as without a GM. This is accomplished using oracles, or tables that you roll to get randomized events and decisions that simulate a GM. It was also popular because the mechanics were really pretty innovative, sort of marking a new chapter in the evolution of PBTA games. Wicked Ones by Ben Nielsen is a game about running a dungeon and being the bad guys. You play as a sort of dungeon manager who, along with your cohorts, design your dungeon in increments and manage imps and monsters to defend it against good guy NPC parties of heroes. Occasionally, you will raid the overworld for plunder, but one of your biggest threats comes from rivalries against fellow dungeon managers. The rules are based on the Blades in the Dark paradigm, but have a lot more moving parts. This game really makes the Forged in the Dark rules sing. Technically, there's a paid deluxe version of Wicked Ones, but the free version is really a complete game. Mork Borg, or Dark Castle in Swedish, is a gritty sort of tongue-in-cheek OSR game by Pell Nilsson and Johan Nohr, published in 2020. You might recognize the game from its brash, skater magazine style artwork and layout, which really either appeals to you or drives you up the wall. The creators in later years released a free version of the game that contains just the rules, and they are all presented in a sterile, easy-to-read format devoid of any of the controversial artwork and layout choices from the original book. As for how the game plays, it's fast, brutal, and easy to pick up. It's a great drinking game. Degenesis was originally a setting created by Christian Gunther and Marko Djordjevic from 2004 and was later rehashed by Marko through his company Six More Vodka in 2014. All of the full-color, lavishly illustrated and designed rulebooks and supplements are, and have always been, free to download. In a nutshell, the rule set is quite decent and serviceable, but both the artwork and the meta story and setting are what hooks a lot of people. The setting takes place 500 years in the future after an apocalyptic cataclysm that destroys all life on Earth except for continental Europe and northern Africa. There is a mutagenic disease that takes on 6 or 8 different forms, and humanity is hanging on for dear life. But the magic of the setting itself comes in how the mysteries of the past unfold as you read through the books. And the detail of the various playable cultures are just mesmerizing.
Blades in the dark.
Okay, here's one that is a free SRD, or system reference document. This is the term for a document or webpage that contains just the text of the rules of a game without any artwork or layout flourishes. Blades in the Dark was originally published in 2017 by Evil Hat and written by John Harper. The rules have you select an archetype in a gothic urban fantasy setting and operate a criminal enterprise through a series of heists and other missions. The play cycle and player options was pretty groundbreaking, and even though the game had its conceptual roots in Powered by the Apocalypse, it became recognized as its own foundation, spawning countless clones and spin-offs referred to as being forged in the dark. In other words, Blades in the Dark is a modern classic. Lancer is a mech fighting game created by Miguel Lopez and Tom Parkinson Morgan and published in 2019 by Massive Press. The game takes place in a remarkably unique and interesting future full of ultra high tech that borders on magic. The setting's lore is so deep and philosophical that some actually find it impenetrable, but what you're really doing in the game is fighting mechs. The artwork is also really pretty spellbinding and inspiring. It's probably worth noting that the rules do not offer much in the way of roleplay outside of your mech, but the in-mech mechanics are really second to none in the RPG space. Old School Essentials is a recapitulation of Dungeons & Dragons BX edition and had a number of chief creators over the years, including J. Eric Holmes, Tom Moldvay, and Frank Menser, among others. This cleaned up, consolidated, and otherwise almost unaltered version called Old School Essentials was put together by Gavin Norman and has become the gold standard for D&D retro clones. You can access all of Gavin's meticulous organization on his official website, where the entirety of Old School Essentials lives in SRD format. If you're not familiar with old BX rules, they tend to be brutal with a mix of breathless simplicity compared to modern games, along with bizarre quirks that have since been smoothed out and abandoned over the decades by those modern games. There's nothing quite like playing Zero Edition D&D though. It's a unique and fun experience, even if it's not necessarily nostalgic for you. The Gumshoe system was originally conceived of by Robin Laws and has been incorporated in a variety of games published by Pelgrane Press. I haven't reviewed the Gumshoe SRD, which is a whopping 300 pages, but I have reviewed a couple of games that use versions of it. Knights Black Agents and Swords of the Serpentine. The system itself was designed so that players in an investigative adventure would not miss key clues that keep the mystery going forward. The system tries to remove the fear of players solving the mystery at all and put emphasis on everything else that happens during an investigation. The little discoveries, the fights, chases, conversations, and just never deny the players the thrill of a mystery unfolding. The best Gumshoe games I've seen so far happen to be first-party games published by Pelgrane Press, but if you've seen some third-party Gumshoe games that you would recommend, please leave them down in the comments. And here is the rest of the list, games that I haven't yet reviewed, but which you can get for free in one form or another.
Basic Fantasy.
Basic Fantasy is another rehash of D&D BX, and at the time of this recording is in its 4th edition. It was started in 2006 by Chris Gonerman and now enjoys its own ecosystem of fan-created supplements. The main changes from the original rules that you'll see here are an ascending armor class and separation of character, race, and class. This 4th edition was released in January of 2023 under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike license, which is almost as open source as it gets. Unlike Old School Essentials, you can download the actual PDFs with the artwork and book layout for free from the website.
Swords and Wizardry.
If you want true old school,
I'm talking about that old
then you need to go back to Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax's D&D from 1974. If that's what you're after, then Swords and Wizardry is your huckleberry. It was put together by Matthew Finch and originally published in 2008 through Mythmere Games, and the latest edition came out in 2011. Just like with all retro clones, the rules are cleaned up and reorganized from the original. In the case of Swords and Wizardry, there are 3 versions. The white box, which is just a recap of the original 1974 boxed set, the core edition, which includes some expanded rules to make the game a little more familiar to modern players, and the complete version, which includes almost all of the rules and options that were later added to Swords and Wizardry and bits and pieces. The free version that I've linked below is the Core Edition, which is kind of the perfect edition because it's playable and comprehensible. Considering the price, it's at least worth a download and a look.
Stars Without Number.
Stars Without Number is a sandbox sci-fi RPG by Kevin Crawford, published in 2011 and revised in 2017. This game is practically worshipped by segments of the RPG community, not because of its rules, which are a bit of an odd mix between OSR and maybe 3rd edition D&D, but rather because of its GM tools. There are just pages and pages of valuable world-building resources that have inspired thousands of GMs to forge their own world, and more often than not, use a different rule set than what Crawford gives you here. I know I said that I wouldn't list any quick starter versions in this video, but this one is sort of an exception. Crawford released a free version of the revised Stars Without Number that is more than just a quick starter. It runs 260 pages and contains a lot of what the game is most known for, the GM tools. The paid version, which is $19.99 on DriveThruRPG, runs an additional 60 pages of content.
Worlds Without Number.
Worlds Without Number is a sandbox fantasy RPG also by Kevin Crawford, this one published in 2021, and delivering the same brand of extremely well-received set of GM and world-building tools as Stars Without Number. And again, there's a free version, one that runs 350 pages, and a deluxe version that runs 400 pages. But think about that. The free version is 350 pages. That's a lot of polished content for free. The free version contains all of these things here, again, most notably the world building and adventure creation tools.
Godbound.
Godbound is an RPG where you play as a god, written by Kevin Crawford and published in 2016. As you may have guessed, there's a free version and a deluxe version. The free version runs 191 pages and the deluxe runs 241. Crawford really pushes the envelope on what a free version of a game should contain, and his adventurousness in this department has actually reaped him a lot of success. Anyway, in Godbound, you play as a god who grows in strength, but at the core, it's still more or less an OSR game. Just take a look at your character sheet in this game to see what I'm talking about there.
Cairn.
Cairn is an OSR game by Yochai Gal based on both Ben Milton's Knave and Chris McDowell's Into the Odd, published in 2021. It has a suggestion of a setting which is at the edge of a large haunted forest full of ruins and monsters, but you are otherwise meant to construct the setting through rollable tables. It's a lean and brutal rule set that is more than the sum of its parts and forces players to play cautiously. One of the most notable aspects of this free game is that it contains some really strong advice for GMs who are specifically trying to capture the spirit of OSR style gameplay. Pretty much every aspect of Cairn is pure OSR. It's based on 2 OSR classics, but innovates with a few new concepts of its own. It's brutal on PCs, and it's offered under a Creative Commons license, so you can make supplements for Cairn with very few restrictions.
Mausritter.
Mausritter is a fast, easy, but brilliantly designed RPG where you play as adventuring mice, written and illustrated by Isaac Williams. It was originally released as a short zine in 2019, but has since expanded into a fully fleshed, yet still tidy, 48-page game. One of my favorite aspects of this game is the card-based inventory, where you track your loadout with cards that physically take up space on your character sheet, and managing items is extremely intuitive. The underlying rule set of the game is built on Into the Odd by Chris McDowell, which is of course the same beast that helped to spawn the rules for the previous game I mentioned on this list, Cairn. I'll leave a link to Into the Odd, which has recently been remastered and published by Free League. That game isn't free, but it's been mentioned enough times that I'll link it. But yeah, Mausritter is free, and it just feels like a classic because of its devotion to theme and simplicity and purity of its play cycle.
Condensed.
Fate is a landmark role-playing game originally designed by Fred Hicks and Rob Donahue and published in 2003, based on a previous system called Fudge. It has since evolved through 3 more editions and split into 3 different versions. I don't even want to get into the differences of these versions. Let's just establish the fact that one of these versions, Fate Condensed, is free, or pay what you want. You can go download it now. It's 68 pages, and it's a great standalone game that delivers everything you need to experience the epitome of fiction first. Due to the powerful mechanic of aspects, core details and scenes are the responsibility of both the GMs and the players.
The Cepheus Engine.
If you're a fan of that dusty old sci-fi classic Traveler, then you already know about the Cepheus Engine, the open source rules system based on that game. This rule system was carefully crafted by Jason Kemp, and you can grab the SRD for free or get it in book form for a few bucks. I think the biggest attraction to the Cepheus Engine is for those looking to create new works that have the Traveler flavor. It almost goes without saying that the Cepheus Engine is all backwards compatible with decades of Traveler content. All that being said, this is old school RPG game design, so if you're looking for wildly modern or innovative concepts and mechanics, this is probably not the place to look. Well, and here's the actual Traveler SRD if you want to track closer to the official game as released by Mongoose in 2008. Risus is a rules-light generic RPG created by S. John Ross way back in 1993 and intended to be a comedy game. Risus means laughter in Latin. The game uses D6s for everything, and your character's aspects are measured in broad descriptions called cliches. Skill rolls are just cliche versus difficulty. Each time a player fails, they take damage to the cliche, which makes them more likely to fail at that action for the remainder of the challenge. The game has garnered a huge following over the years with dozens of fan sites and obviously hundreds of supplements. One more interesting note about this RPG, it's 4 pages long. 13th Age is a fantasy RPG designed by Rob Heinsu and Jonathan Tweet, published in 2013 by Pelgrane Press. It uses the D20 system that was born from the open game license by Wizards of the Coast in the year 2000, the rules of which were used as the basis for Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition. Although Pelgrane Press is not giving away the PDF of the core rulebook, you can still access all of the rules through the SRD, conveniently found at 13thAgeSRD.com. This is a pretty great site that starts with exactly what makes 13th Age special and different. A lot of people love 13th Age specifically because of these features listed here. Hit the pause button and check them out. Troika is one of those trippy OSR games that's just dripping with weird creativity. It was created by Daniel Sell and originally published in 2016 by Melsonian Arts Council. The game itself has gone through a few editions at this point, and you can get the plain text version of the latest Numinous edition that includes all of the rules but none of the trippy artwork. The rules document runs 74 pages, so it definitely feels like you're getting the whole game here. The idea is that you are hopping around a planescape-like multiplanar universe, which has a major node in a city called Troika. You play as one of 36 bizarre, distinct classes. The mechanics are a very simple 2d6, and the combat is not balanced, but you might find some great inspiration in these pages. Alright, I know I've been listing a lot of SRDs here, but Quest is one that comes for free with the artwork and everything. The game itself was designed by TC Sotek and published in 2020. If you've had an ear to the ground in the RPG world in the past few years, you might recall this game as being hyped as the game that would give WotC's D&D a run for its money. Creators don't use that kind of verbiage anymore in their marketing because it's just so painfully naive. But Quest is good. It's a bit of a mix of Powered by the Apocalypse and OSR with no named attributes or skills for your character. I think the hope was that this game's simplicity would be the answer to the D&D community's call for charming simplicity and straightforward game design, except the D&D community didn't really want that at all. But you might. Talislanta goes way back. It was originally written by Stephen Michael Secchi and published in 1987 by Bard Games. At the time of this recording, a 6th and final version is going to be released in a few months at the end of 2023. The game itself is pretty standard fantasy role-playing, but where it excels is in the rich setting, with countless detailed civilizations, a rich history, and emphasis on political intrigue and exotic world exploration rather than dungeon delving. The coolest thing is that the publisher gives away the first 5 editions of Talislanta for free, as well as all the supplements, in PDF format at their website. I'll also leave a link below to where you can pre-order the 6th and final edition. 4Color, or 4Color System, or 4C, is a concise 32-page retro clone of the Marvel Superheroes RPG, or Phase Rip, which was originally designed by Jeff Brugg and published in 1984. 4C itself was published in 2007, and it does not waste any of your time with fluff, as you can see from this table of contents. The document does describe itself as a toolkit rather than a role-playing game, so that just means you can plug these classic rules into any comic book setting you want. The way the game works is that you have to refer to a color-coded chart called the master table. Your rank value in the power or trait that you're using is on the left-hand column. You roll a D100, and the master table tells you one of 4 possibilities for your roll. Black is a failed attempt, red is a minor success, blue is a success, and yellow is a major success. The higher your rank value, the better chance of success. Renaissance is a game by Ken Walton and Peter Cakebread. It's a D100 game based on BRP, which, if you recall, is the basis of most of Chaosium's games like Call of Cthulhu. Renaissance caters to historically minded gamers who want to occupy the early modern period, so roughly 14 or 1500 AD to around the year 1800. In the free SRD, you'll find GM toolkits for ships, alchemy, and witchcraft, things like that. Overall, it's a crunchy, low-powered fantasy RPG that will feel mighty familiar to you if you've played any D100 games before. I think this game would be particularly rewarding for history buffs who are all well-read in the early modern period. The SRD runs 139 pages, or you can pick up the PDF of the Deluxe edition that runs 30 more pages for $5. Pathfinder is a fantasy RPG first published in 2009 by Paizo and based on Wizards of the Coast's D&D 3rd edition, albeit a lot crunchier. The second edition of Pathfinder was released in 2019 and was different enough from the first edition that they aren't compatible, but oddly not wildly different. Fans of Pathfinder, and there are a lot of them, will tell you that the game gives you the freedom to actually make tactical strategies in combat. The setting's world at this point also has a lot of deep lore, and the coolest thing is that every last supplement for 2nd edition is released in SRD format on this website, including the core rules, of course. This website is notable because of its ease of use and power as a quick online referencing tool. Just really well done. Starfinder is a sci-fi RPG from the creators of Pathfinder, Paizo, and published in 2017. If you're into games on the crunchier, more complex side of the spectrum, and you're already familiar with Pathfinder rules, and you want a massive, everything but the kitchen sink sci-fi setting, then it's Starfinder for you. The website for this SRD looks to be run by the same folks as the Pathfinder website, and has the same really great usability. And you also get all of the supplements that come out for Starfinder in SRD format here. I will say though, one of the most remarkable aspects of the Starfinder product line is its artwork, which you are largely missing out on with just the SRD. So as I mentioned, this is a very incomplete and largely disorganized list of free games. Hopefully you found one here that piques your interest. If you have any thoughts or experiences with any of these games, or if you have some suggestions of free RPGs that aren't quick starters, please leave a comment down below. And thanks to Patreon Nathan for helping me flesh out this list a little bit more before publishing, as well as all the other helpful suggestions on my Discord server. Links to my Patreon, my Discord, and of course all the games mentioned in this video are down below. Thanks for watching. See ya.